At the back, you've got two clutch paddles because when you're in a race car, it's quite small. So when you turn, if you have to come out of the pit garage, if you have to come out going left, you can't use this hand. You don't actually have enough space. So depending on where you're coming out. And that's used basically like a motorcycle. You know, if any of you ride a manual bike, it's the same thing. There's a whole bunch of different functions here, and this is the steering wheel from before the hybrid era that we have nowadays. But you still have a whole bunch of functionality. The KERS system, the kinetic energy system that the teams used at that time was about having a battery pack that stored energy, and you could use a switch here to basically adjust the amount of energy that was dissipated by the battery. You got a button for the pit lane speed limiter when you come into a pit stop, the button for the radio to talk to the engineers. You've got a neutral button, so when you change gears with these two paddles on the back, and then finally when you want to stop, you press this button to go to neutral. You got switches here for the engine settings, it changes the amount of the fuel mixture is what they call it. A clutch setting here, so that adjusts the amount of clutch slip for the start. So the engineers would look at the data and, based on the track conditions and the tire grip conditions, they will give you a suggestion on what is the best way for the clutch to release itself. You've got a switch here to change depending on the different tires, because the radius, in fact, of the intermediate and the wet tires is different to the slicks, so that changes the calibration for it. There's a whole load of other stuff going on. There are a couple of switches here for the engine, for the oil breather and overflow, and then you got some displays up here. So you got lights that'll come up, tell you when to shift gear. You got an indicator there, tell you what gear you're in, and then a couple of other indicators there which you can toggle through to give you different parts of information. So a whole load of things. And at the back you got the switch for DRS to open the rear wing flap in case you want to overtake. You got another switch here which you would use to, at that time, with a KERS system for the hybrid, and in fact you still have it now. You hear sometimes engineers tell the driver you can use the overtake button. And basically what that means is they can use a bit more power for a short period of time. You'll normally only get it for about 5 or 6 seconds of a bit more power. And at the back, you've got two clutch paddles because when you're in a race car, it's quite small. So when you turn, if you have to come out of the pit garage, if you have to come out going left, you can't use this hand. You don't actually have enough space. So depending on where you're coming out. And that's used basically like a motorcycle. If any of you ride a manual bike, it's the same thing. You just release it like you would on a motorcycle. So it's pretty straightforward. And then, as I said before, you got the paddles to change gear behind you. You have to. You have no choice. You at the end of the day, you're not pressing all of them all the time, obviously. So, and this is why there's a lot of mental strain on the drivers as much as the physical strain. And that's why nowadays actually drivers spend a lot of time in the simulators because they can use their same steering wheel in the simulator and they practice it. They do hundreds of laps. So then it builds up this muscle memory in their brain that, if an engineer tells them go to diff position 6, they don't need to look at the wheel. They immediately are able to switch it. And, that just comes with practice. I think, to start doing it without having to think about it and do it intuitively, it does probably take, the first quarter of a season. Especially, I think, you have drivers who switch teams, who switch from, you take Daniel Ricciardo, for example. He's gone from racing with a Renault power unit to now racing with Mercedes power at McLaren. So he's first of all switched teams and they've got a completely different steering wheel. Secondly, the engines have changed, so he's got a whole bunch of new functions to learn and terminology as well. Different teams use different words and terms for the same functions. And, you have to learn all that. But nowadays, that's a big part of the simulator program is you go in there and do a whole bunch of running to learn how to use all these switches.